The sky was heavy that evening. Dark clouds loomed over the airport as passengers hurried through boarding gates. Among them, a 14-year-old girl named Bahia Bakery held tightly to her mother's hand. They were excited, heading to the Comoros Islands to visit family. Bahia had never been to the islands before. She had packed a new summer dress, her favorite snacks, and a tiny diary where she had written, "I hope I see dolphins from the airplane window." She sat by the window seat of Yaminia Flight 626, her mother beside her, comforting her with a soft smile. The flight attendants moved about, calm and professional. Passengers leaned back as the engines roared to life. The plane ascended into the night sky. Clouds swallowed them quickly. But no one worried. Turbulence was normal, wasn't it? Until it wasn't. Midway through the flight, something changed. The air grew unstable. The plane began to shake harder. Trays fell. Children screamed. Oxygen masks dropped. Someone cried out, "What's happening?" Bahia turned to her mother, eyes wide, heart pounding. Her mother leaned in, touched her cheek, and whispered, "Everything will be fine." That was the last thing Bahia heard. Before the world shattered. There was a flash, and then nothing. Silence. Darkness. And water. Cold, choking water. Bahia woke up, gasping. Her arms flailed. She was in the ocean. Night had swallowed the sky. No plane. No mother. No voices. Only the endless sound of waves crashing and metal sinking. She couldn't swim. She had never even tried. But panic makes the body stronger. Her hands grasped at anything that floated, broken panels, luggage, metal. She finally caught hold of a large piece of the fuselage, sharp-edged and slippery. She clung to it, breathing heavily, blood dripping from her arms and legs. Every muscle burned. But she didn't let go. She was wearing only light clothes. No shoes. Her feet were sliced by debris. Her knees scraped raw. Salt stung her wounds, but the fear of sinking was worse than pain. She didn't know if her mother was alive. She shouted her name. Again. And again. But the ocean answered only with silence. As the hours passed, the sea grew colder. Her body trembled uncontrollably. The sky above was starless. It felt like the end of the world. She lost track of time. Minutes blurred into hours. At one point, she began to imagine things. That someone was swimming toward her. That lights were blinking beneath the surface. That her mother's voice was calling softly, just behind her ear. She knew none of it was real. But still, it kept her mind from breaking. At one moment, she thought of letting go. Her arms had no more strength. Her eyes kept closing. And death didn't seem so terrible anymore. But then, she remembered her mother's last touch. The calm in her voice. And that was enough. She held on. 9 hours passed. The sky turned from black to gray. Then orange. Then gold. The sun rose over the ocean, and for the first time, the waves looked less cruel. But Bahia was barely conscious. Then, in the far distance, 2 fishermen spotted something strange floating in the water. At first, they thought it was trash. But as they approached, they saw a face. 2 swollen eyes barely open. One small hand still gripping wreckage. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. She was alive. When they pulled her onto the boat, she didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Doctors would later say she had fractured her collarbone, broken her leg, torn muscles in her back, and suffered deep psychological trauma. But she had survived. When the news broke, the world reacted with disbelief. How could a teenage girl, with no swimming ability, survive a plane crash, alone, in the middle of the ocean? Bahia herself didn't understand it either. She said, "I just held on. I thought, maybe my mother would need me." She didn't know until days later that her mother had died in the crash. That realization broke her more than any bone ever could. She recovered slowly. She didn't speak much. She didn't like cameras or interviews. She just wanted to be quiet. But over time, she wrote her story in a book, not to become famous, but to honor those who didn't make it. And maybe, to remind herself that what she lived through was real. Today, Bahia lives a private life. She avoids the spotlight. She says very little in public. But to those who know her story, she is a symbol of quiet strength. Not the kind that shouts. Not the kind that lifts weights or wins awards. The kind that floats silently, hour after hour, in a sea of death. And simply refuses to sink.